Thank you so much. Welcome back to the show. We have quite a show for you folks here tonight. A little bit later on, if you're planning a wedding sometime in the month of June or any month on the calendar, stay with us. We have wedding day do's and don'ts with Frank and Fred. Also Jerry Seinfeld, Ken Murray, and my first guest, who I'll just bring out right now. It says here, this is hard to imagine. We'll find out if it's true. He claims, my first guest now, to have killed 24 men. While he was employed as a hitman for the Mafia, but now he says that his life has changed, and he has written a book and is making a movie about that change. Here is a copy of the book right here. Please welcome Sonny Gibson. Nice to see you. So, now, is that true? You actually killed 24 people?
No, involved with 24, killed 14 during my involvement with the Sicilian Mafia day. Was you in a prison just a minute ago? I look at prison riot.
Was I in a prison just a minute ago?
Yeah, that smoke.
Oh, no, that was... remind you of home, did it, Sonny?
Yeah, right. I found God inside prison, Dave, in 1974, and with the love of Jesus Christ, I changed my life around with the help of a priest and a Christian brother.
So that's the good side of the story. Let's cover the ugly stuff first, okay?
All right.
You were employed by the Mafia as a hitman.
Well, not exactly employed. I took vows 3.5 years in Catania, Sicily, and went through and became an assassin for them, a robot. And I talked to kids all over the country, Dave. I talked to about 600,000 young people, and I do scared straight programs. I try to let young people know that if they get caught up in their gangs or drugs, they can become a robot.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by somebody who was one of these guys who just, you killed for money, right?
No. There was a loyalty, brainwash, robotism. The Mafia told me to do something, I would have done it.
Oh, I see. You felt like to uphold their creed, you would go out and whatever they needed done, you'd do it.
Well, it's a lot of training that went through over the period of years and to get to that point. And it'd be hard to, we don't have enough time to talk about on a program, of course, but I became the type of animal that would have already killed anyone that they would have told me to assassinate.
Okay, so you really don't want to get into the... What I was looking for is, you get up in the morning, the phone rings, they say, Sonny, going to be a guy at the market, his name's Herb, unload him.
Not exactly, Dave. That's what Hollywood likes for you to believe, of course.
It don't work that way.
No. My assignments was knocking off 13 communists over a period of 18 months. And I don't praising that because of that, but training went into many hours, tape recordings of listening to their procedures, their MO, their mode of operation, what they did, what they didn't do.
Why was the organized crime, the club that you were a part of, why were they interested in erasing communist leaders?
Well, the Sicilian Mafia have had a war against the entrusters of communism since Mussolini. And as you might recall, his death was a mafia killing, where they had the violent way they killed Mussolini. That was not just a crowd of angry people. There were mafia soldiers that executed that man. Communism, of course, is spreading over Europe more than ever today. I think not too long ago there was 40 Red Brigades that was killed last year by the Sicilian Mafia. Your first question was, why would the Sicilian Mafia, that's not organized crime, I'm talking about the Mafia in Sicily, have such a war? Communism, there's no free enterprises. And in the old days, when I was involved in the early 60s, it was a vendetta, where today I would think more it's into enterprises because of most of those old-timers are dead now who had the vendetta.
At one time, you were going to take over the Philippines. You had a plan to do that?
Yes, I did.
What was, why and what happened? I mean, it didn't happen, did it?
No.
You didn't take it over?
No.
No.
Well, you get to a point, and I became from 1964 to 1971 one of the most powerful men in this country as an international carrier for the Mafia. And I had a casino in the Bahamas, and I helped finance Frontier in Vegas, and I got to the point where I felt I was invisible, and I needed $500 million to take over the Philippine government and make it a casino haven. And in doing so, of course, I got indicted in '71 for the largest mail fraud case in U.S. history and refused to testify against the Mafia and end up going to the state penitentiary.
So you lost me there in the Philippines. What happened?
When I refused
what happened to the takeover?
Well, I went to the state pen, and I thought my attorney said, "Oh, go to prison, Sonny. We'll get you out in 6 to 8 months." Of course, I went to prison, and there was no 6 to 8 months getting out. In fact, I went to the first parole board. I was on a life sentence. They said they would not look at me again until 1986.
Yeah. I got other questions here. I'm interested in asking you about this. How long did you do this stuff before they put you away for good?
I was probably in 20 years of hard crime.
Oh, okay. We're going to find out more about the career in hard crime to be had for you kids out there. No, we're just joking. We'll be right back with Sonny Gibson. Welcome back. Sonny Gibson is here, and 20 years organized crime, shooting people, killing people. When it happened, when it took place, do you have any remorse about pulling the trigger or whatever you did to that person? Is it tough to do that?
Well, it wasn't a period of remorse. I've been asked that question a lot of times, Dave, and I don't think a man can go to prison and pay a debt to society. So because of my change and an act of a miracle got me released, and because of my belief in God, does not pay back the debt to society. One of the things that I'm trying to do, and I feel is right to do, a promise I made to God, is when I ever got out of prison, could work as an actor, I would go around talking to young people and let them know the harsh conditions of prison life and drugs. And one of the things that I'm getting involved in, which I'm very proud to say, we're trying to get Congress to go on this prayer, put prayer back in the school for kids who want to pray. And the reason for that, in 19 years, prayer has been out of school, your murder rate in 1,000 average students around the country have gone up 220%.
So now this is, you believe that there's a correlation there between the prayer in school and the murder rate?
Yes, I do, for this reason. Not so much the religious standpoint of the fact, but in prison, when I changed, I got a group of guys, and we didn't Bible study, but it was called Bible study, but what we did was fellowship, and I got all the hitmen, and we started talking about each one's problems. Well, what I'm trying to say is, during that time, we had this thing for a year and a half, this workshop, fellowship type of thing. Only 2 hits was done during that year and a half. Last year, that same prison had 47 killings. Now, I'm not saying that prayer will change the whole world. But what I'm saying is, since prayer had been taken out of school since '62, the morals of young people have degraded tremendously. More than 1,000% of pregnancies and drugs. And so that's what I'm saying. I think there is my personal belief, I think it is a strong standard, but not forced prayer. I don't believe in forcing people to pray, but I do believe that young people all have the right in school. I'd rather see them out there praying than going down shooting drugs in the arm, Dave.
Yeah. Let me, I know you're very interested in talking about the change that you went through in prison. I would like to spend a little more time here talking about your earlier life. Now,
okay.
You got into organized crime where are you from originally? Let's just start there.
Well, Noblesville, Indiana, I was born. Ended up in Indianapolis as a poor kid. Well, you remember the old stinky part of Indianapolis where the Kingan's plant was at? There by the river? You weren't around there, okay. Well, that's where I was raised, and you were in the nicer neighborhood.
It wasn't stinky, as I recall.
Well, anyways, what I was trying to say, I got the nickname Stinky going to school in that river, see, and I took a ball bat at 8 years old to some kids, and by the time I was 13...
But why? What do you mean? Were you provoked into it, or you just...
Yeah, I was just one of those type of kids that believe violence was a way at an early age. I was taken from the country, put in the city, being half Sicilian. You know, being Sicilian in Indianapolis was like being black in Georgia, you know, so I ended up in the crime, and at 13 to 15, I pulled 50 armed robberies and committed my first murder at 16.
16. Now, what were the circumstances surrounding that?
An armed robbery, and 2 of the other partners wanted to take the money, and I killed them.
Was this a fun life for you? You were in it for, I mean, I know that sounds stupid, but for you made your living this way for 20 years. There must have been some enjoyment or something to be had. Excitement?
No. Reparata Mazzola, my writer, and who will be out shortly, but we went over this many months working on the book and the screenplay. And the fact of it was, I came from such a poverty-stricken neighborhood, and I'm not making that as an excuse, but right now, 72% of your convicts in American prisons come from ghetto or low-income neighborhoods. And I was determined not to be in that two-room shack and be called Stinky the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd asked me this question 3 years ago when I came out of prison, I just said I was a bad kid.
Yeah.
But working for 2 years with Reparata had brought a lot of insight out to what started the crime. And it just, again, we don't have enough time to go into it. But basically, I was determined to get my mother and father out of this old area and go on into bigger, better things.
Let me quickly here. Now, if you were in organized crime for 20 years, you must know an awful lot. Why is it that you're allowed to walk around free? Don't the boys think, you know, Stinky is getting too big for his shorts?
Well, in 1971, when I refused to testify against 6 mafia families in this country, and I went to prison, and I try to tell young people, the mafia used me like a pimp uses a whore, Dave. They didn't care about Sonny Gibson. However, being the way I was raised, I didn't believe in ratting.
So you didn't rat on them, they knew you were okay? Did they leave you alone, seriously?
Well, in the book, the names are changed. In the movie, the names are changed. And most of them are dead today. But we did have one of them contact our agent a while back and says, I believe what Sonny's doing for kids. Tell him we're glad he keeps his mouth shut. So I don't worry about him. I let God handle those people, Dave.
Well, all right. And we're going to meet your friend Reparata Mazzola right after this. Thank you very much. Paul Schaefer, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with Sonny Gibson, and we're going to meet now. How do you want to introduce her? I guess we can read this. She has been a lead singer with a rock group. She was one of Barry Manilow's backup singers. She is now involved with making the film version of your life story, The Mafia Kingpin. Here now is Reparata Mazzola.
Correct.
Is this an unusual name? I've not heard.
Yeah, my mother had a very strange sense of humor.
Oh, that was her idea of a joke, huh? Now, tell me, how did you go from being with Barry Manilow to Sonny? I mean,
Well, they are quite different. I'll never forget my mother's reaction when I told her. I was out of work for a period there after I left Barry, and I was going to act and write full time, as everyone in Hollywood has that intention, or they're being a producer. So I told her, well, Mom, I finally got a job. And she said, oh, that's good. What is it? You're going to work with, you know, Helen Reddy or somebody? No, I'm writing a Mafia hitman story. And, you know, after she fainted, her reaction was fairly good.
Fairly good. Now, how did that come about? You wrote this book here,
right?
And you're writing the screenplay.
Right. The screenplay's finished. It's my first book, I might add. I've never written a book. I did work in television, and I was a writer on talk shows like this.
Really? What shows?
Well, great shows. AM New York, when it first went on the air, a long time ago. This is back in the early 70s. And the Pat Collins Show. I was nominated for an Emmy, and I left that. And everybody thought I was crazy because that was a steady job.
Well, both of those shows are a good experience for writing a book about the Mafia. You're not going to get better training there. And then, and you also worked with another rock and roll group, right?
Right. I had a rock and roll group in the 60s called Reparata Mazzola. So I was the second lead of that group. That was also a good experience for that. I also have a degree in French, which is terrific for writing a book about a Mafia hitman. But it was thanks to Sonny's notes in prison. He sat in for 5 years and wrote his notes. And then he told me the story, and I wrote it, and wrote the screenplay, and we're about to do the film.
Now, let me interrupt here a second and ask Sonny. I understand that other people, Norman Mailer for one, and somebody else wanted to write this book, but you chose Reparata.
Well, there was a lot of fine writers that I was interviewed with and had come across. And the reason I went with Rip, these writers are great writers, but none of them knew anything about the Mafia, but they thought they did, in a way they want the public to realize. And this book and this film is not to praise the Mafia or crime or drugs like The Godfather did. It's to show the real harsh conditions of crime life and prison life. And Reparata, who absolutely was a total stranger to Mafia and drugs and prostitution and prison life, I read some of the screenplays that she had written, and we had met doing a picture with Dino De Laurentiis, and I knew she was a fine actress. And after seeing all these platinum albums in her home, and she was the lead singer of Manilow, I said, gee, this is a talented woman. And I saw her screenplay writing. I decided that I went back to my sponsor. I found the perfect person, and I said, Reparata Mazzola, and they said, who? And never wrote a book, no. And so I went back to Rip, so I got $1,600 in the bank. I says, you write my book, we go 50-50, and you write the screenplay at the same time, so it won't be way out of contents. And I says, since you're a fine actress, I want you to play the part of Teresa, my ex-wife. And so that's how we got together.
Yeah. Has anybody from here on back, when you were trying to get the money for the book and whatever, said, gee, Sonny, this is this all true? I mean, has anybody, you had any trouble people being skeptical about this? And then you bring along someone named Reparata Mazzola. No offense, of course, but
well,
documented. There are lots of newspaper articles about Sonny's past, and I did interview.
Does his past frighten you? Assuming it's all true, does it just frighten you to be sitting, and you probably go to dinner with him and stuff?
Well, it did, actually, at first, David, it did. I had to disconnect at times when I was interviewing him, and I would say, well, when Sonny did that, or what did he do? Because the book is so realistic, and that's the way the film will be. Totally realistic. You see, The Godfather was total fiction. They glorified the Mafia. This tells the truth about the Mafia. And the film that we're doing is the largest film in motion picture history. It's got 156 speaking parts.
And is that out now, soon to be out?
We're in pre-production right now, and we start principal photography sometime at the end of the summer. And it'll be out in late '84.
Yeah,
so.
okay. It's a monumental undertaking. Late '83.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just play along with Sonny.
Right.
Well, it was very interesting meeting you, both of you folks. Sonny, good luck to you. And Reparata, nice meeting you. Thank you very much for being here. It's called The Mafia Kingpin, and that's him over there. We're going to pause for station identification. We'll be back with Wedding Do's and Don'ts from Frank and Fred.